Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
It's a pivotal time for the continent and particularly for defense companies. So I would like to start our conversation looking at the latest defense measures announced by the European Commission and already agreed to some extent by the European leaders. From a business perspective, I'm wondering whether the announcements are changing the outlook for the company.
Well, first of all, I have to see the numbers. Okay, there's a claim to inject a massive amount of money for defense in Europe. You heard about 0.8 trillion or so, but we have to see how this is allocated or how this will be allocated, whether this will be preferentially on European products or NATO products or global products. We have to see the rules and the governance. Having said this, of course, such an injection means that we should be ready to defend ourselves much better than in the past. I think Europe has benefit of a long period of peace for about 80 years. We consider peace as granted, whereas we have learned recently that peace has a cost and peace must be defended. So maybe this is the time we do it for real.
They are saying that the aim, at least for now, is to make available at least 150 billion euros.
Yeah.
And that cash, that fund specifically, is meant to go to European defense. So I'm wondering whether you're in a position to tell investors that you can increase the guidance for the coming years.
Well, before talking about the guidance, we have to talk about capacity and production. I've shown to my investors very recently when I presented my industrial plan, the update of the industrial plan, that if we increase by 1% the expenditure in defense at domestic level or at European level, Leonardo itself could intercept some 2-3 billions per point of GDP every year. So that means that in a few years we can grow remarkably, and therefore the first challenge is to be ready to deliver for such an increase of demand. So capacity boost is what we have to do now in the domains where we are active. That means air, space, land, sea, everywhere. And digitalization, AI. So this is the challenge, the main challenge for defense, to be ready to deliver on time. And then, of course, I think alliances will be important because Europe is very fragmented. There are a number of companies in defense, rather big. Leonardo is in the range of 20 billion as revenues, 18, but not as big as the competitors in US or in China, for instance. So maybe we should make aggregations, alliances to create giants, especially in defense. So we have a lot to do.
Talking about alliances, there were media reports this week suggesting that you're having already conversations with European regulators about a potential deal with Thales and Airbus for your satellite business. What can you tell us about that?
I confirm that Thales, Leonardo, and Airbus are talking because we are all interested in trying to find a solution for the underperformance in Europe in the space domain. Launchers, satellites, primarily telecom satellites, but there are also perspectives and challenges in the end-to-end satellite services and exploration, so on and so forth. So at the moment we are working together and trying to find whether there is a possible good synergy, whether this is convenient from the market point of view, and of course also whether this is acceptable from the antitrust point of view. Or we're just discussing this.
It's just talks for now, but I'm wondering whether you find that there's more appetite from the regulators to approve such deals. You know, we see European officials, European leaders coming up with big words now on defense. Is that also being felt from the regulatory perspective?
I don't think I can give an answer because we're starting to study how this idea of alliance could be deployed. So I don't have basic elements to tell you, yes, they're more active, proactive, or they are very conservative. However, I believe that in emergency times, I mean, we are actually living in war period. This is a war economy, at least. I think the antitrust and the regulation that are normal in peaceful times are used to guarantee the best offer to the citizen. Well, in this specific moment of war crisis, they should be released a little bit. I mean, I think that what is most relevant at the moment is to guarantee deterrence and security, global security to the continent, more than the best price for a tank.
Right. Talking about potential satellite deals here, I'm wondering whether perhaps your aim or your dream would be to create a solution that actually challenges the dominance of Starlink.
Look, for Leonardo as a company, the strategy is very clear. End-to-end satellite services. That means, especially in observation, monitoring, GPS, geolocalization. Those are services that are needed in agriculture, in defense, in basically all fields. Monitoring infrastructures. And I believe there's a big demand, there's a growing demand at world level. And this is under the umbrella of the global security concept that for me will be the future of defense. For the time being, SATCOM communication is not very successful, the one based on geostationary satellites. And apparently the low orbit strategy that Elon Musk and others in the US have anticipated seems to be very successful. But the point is not to compete with them. The point is to realize a solid infrastructure. I still believe that in space there is a lot of room for everybody in terms of products and services. So I don't want to see the telecom capability that is offered by Elon Musk at the moment. I want to see a robust Europe capable to build its own infrastructures to guarantee the security of the continent. That's, for me, is mandatory.
So it's about having a European solution.
Yes.
But ultimately, that's going to challenge Elon Musk's Starlink.
I don't think the challenge it stands in challenging Elon Musk. The challenge is offering an alternative, offering another technology. A monopole will not good for anybody. Will not be good for anybody.
I also was wondering, having spoken to some analysts that cover your stock, whether you think you'll be in a position to perhaps restart a share buyback program in 2026, or that's too far down the line?
Yeah, one of the last boards we had, I was when I explained to my board members the update of the plan that was that is including basically all the joint ventures, the alliances I'm doing Europe-wise because I want to make giants in Europe, and I hope Leonardo can act as a catalyzer for those alliances at Europe level. I also included the possibility, after having increased substantially, remarkably, the dividend in the future, in the near future, maybe to use buyback. Why not? I mean, this is a good opportunity. How to say, this has been announced. My board was favorable. We'll see how this can be deployed. Maybe not this year, maybe next year, but for sure it's in the radar. So we're going to do this sooner or later. I think it's a good tool. But please consider that Leonardo had a strong growth in the last couple of years. Now the share value is very high. We have almost replicated the dividend. And my target was, since the very beginning, to reach the average value of the peers in terms of dividends, the average value of the peers at Europe level. Otherwise, we would have given the idea of a weak company. We're not. So this is now accomplished. Let's see for the future, more technology, hopefully better business, and of course, more dividend and possibly buyback.
Talking about, perhaps being in a position to create more champions in Europe, you've spoken in the past about how you're not favorable of big mergers, that your idea is more to create these alliances like the one we were discussing on satellite. But I was wondering what could change? What could be the catalyst that would change your opinion to perhaps looking at bigger deals in the space?
I have no a priori idea about being against or in favor of mergers, acquisitions. I think I'm very, very simple-minded in this respect. Mm-hmm. First of all, you must have a technology roadmap. You must know where you want to go. Second, you have to see whether the technology and know-how synergy between company one and company two is good enough so that 1 + 1 is equal 3 and not equal 2. If this is the case, and believe me, it's not so common, then you have to see the market perspective. So can you export? Can you get, maybe you give up a little bit your domestic market, but you get, you conquer a fraction of the global market. Mm-hmm. If this is the case, and believe me, this is also very difficult, then there is a political level, antitrust and stuff like that. Now, it's a very clear roadmap. So far, we have identified 2-3 giants, big companies, where the synergy is super. That, for me, is the most fundamental thing. We know where we want to go, we know when we want to be there, and we know exactly what is the advantage to be together. In the future, if the business works and we see that there is a global market which opens up, we might go for the next step. And then we will see the regulatory things and the politics, last step of the stair.
So it's just a more complicated process. You're looking for a quicker solution in the meantime.
There is no quick solution. There is no shortcut to the hard work.
But therefore, you're just more supportive of smaller deals and these alliances that you just highlighted.
You have to start with something. If I waste 3 years with lawyers discussing antitrust here, antitrust there, and all the legal things, but we don't know exactly what we want to do, but we know that there is overlap, so we have to clean the structure, change the governance, then we're gonna work only on regulatory and legal things, and maybe in terms of the industrial opportunities, we miss the train. So I better prefer to start on a clear technology idea, a clear market need, and a clear analysis of the synergy. If we're good, we're going to get a much better global market opportunity, and then hopefully we will grow.
I was also curious about whether there's any updates from your side in terms of your aerostructures business. Can you provide any detail on that?
No, I can't. But in itself, this tells you that we are working, and we have a very good possibility to get a nice solution in short time. But I can't say more, but sorry.
No, I totally understand. Let me just clarify, if you can say, whether perhaps the idea is to have a minority stakeholder position in that part of the business.
It's hard to answer at the moment. I think that we have to create a giant in a sector where giants had problems in the past. We have to explore the right geography for that and the right diversification of the business, military and civil. At that point, it will be clear whether we keep plus 1% or minus 1% compared to half-half, but we have to see this.
So even that isn't clear at this stage?
It's more clear than what I can say.
I understand, but I also have to ask.
I understand your job, and I understand.
Because I know there's a lot of interest from the investment community. Just perhaps to finish the conversation around the outlook for the business, some analysts have recently addressed the fact that your share price, as you highlighted earlier as well, has grown exponentially. And some analysts believe that right now the story is not compelling enough to buy. You're just too expensive at this stage. What would you say to investors? What is the reason? What is the story on why they should believe there's more room to grow for Leonardo?
I'll say 3 things. The first one, let us finish with aerostructures. We'll be disrupted, we'll be happy, I think. And the second one, you will see how the inorganic growth that will originate from the joint venture we did so far will work. I'm sure these 2 things will be convincing. They will take from months to maybe 1 year, but the roadmap, the trend will be clear. The second thing I would say is that all the effort we are doing has been in rationalizing the business, closing off-core business, investing in innovation. This is in a high-tech company. If you don't produce high-tech products, you lose the championship. So unfortunately, this is not instantaneous, but I think they have seen how committed we are in delivery. So we promised something, we did it. I hope we can keep the track, but this our commitment. Least but not last, the war will finish, and we all hope wars to finish. And there will be somebody thinking that, okay, we can reduce the investment in defense because there is no war. That will be a mistake, because defense will change, will develop into global security. And global security means maybe less weapons, but more high-performance computing, more satellites, more data analysis, more AI. So you will see that in the future, hoping that wars will finish, there will be a great need of investment in global security. And global security means digital plus conventional defense. This is still an expanding market. I'm afraid that many digital companies have not yet understood that the core business will change, will develop from bullets to bullets and bytes. And the investment will be on bullets and bytes, no longer only on bullets.
Let me just confirm one final thing before we move on. You've confirmed that you're having conversations with Thales and Airbus. I was just wondering, is there any timing here on when you would like to perhaps conclude these conversations and perhaps present a business plan to the investment community?
Well, it would be surprising if we do all this for not presenting a business plan. But I think there is an assessment phase. We are 3 big groups. We are very motivated. We go along very well. We are discussing. We are exploring. I think it takes a bit of time. It's not an easy operation. So we need to understand, as I said, market constraints, synergies. It takes a bit of time. The investors, I think, know very well this.
But is that months or years?
No, not 3 years for sure.
Months.
I think it's more reasonable, yes.
Let's move on and address also geopolitics and changes. Also, when it comes to the United States, you've said in the past that President Donald Trump has been a wake-up call for Europe.
That was evident.
Is it still evident?
Well, I would say today everybody is looking forward to the sanctions, to the extra taxes. Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated time. I mean, things are changing very quickly. I mean, before, the first thing you did in the morning was to watch at your email. Now it's to watch at the news. So we have to see what happens. But in some sense, let me tell you something. I mean, we are under the NATO umbrella. And the NATO, for me, represents the defense of the Western society with their culture, with their history. And traditionally, I cannot see Italy, Europe outside the Western society, as well as US outside the Western society. So if you want to have a strong NATO, you have two legs, US and Europe. So far, Europe was a rather fragile, small leg. Okay, it is correct that we get more robust, more reliable as partners. And in the meantime, I think I understand the American argument saying, okay, the taxpayer in the US is paying for defense in Europe. That's, in principle, is correct. On the other hand, it is also true that Europe was purchasing a lot of military platforms from US, so part of this money was back into US. I think it's fair to say at the moment that the two continents should be collaborative, share the same culture, but we should be committed to develop our own defense, being a bit more independent. So less money from the States to defend Europe, but in the meantime, less machinery and warfare purchased by the Europeans in US. Fair. And we grow together under the NATO umbrella or whatever you want to call it, because we have to defend the Western society, the Western lifestyle, and I think deterrence is very important.
You mentioned the tariffs there. I just want to clarify because I know there was also a part of the business involved with Boeing. I just was wondering whether you are worried at all that the announcement later tonight from the United States will have any direct impact on the business.
You know, with Boeing, we've been in the supply chain of Boeing for many years, as you know. With the aerostructure, we are having problems also because of the crisis of Boeing. But I think those are periodic fluctuations. And as such, in the market, you have to accept periods that are not very good. My hope is that, I mean, Boeing, first of all, is too big to fail. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that they will recover. They have a fantastic backlog. I don't think the world would benefit of a global crisis in Boeing, to be honest. So I hope we will always have a Boeing around. Maybe the civil aviation market will change a little bit, because what came out of the crisis is that the civil aviation rules, the market rules of civil aviation, not so, profitability is not very high, it's a difficult market, supply chain very delocalized. So maybe a few things could be changed. But let's be serious, guys. We need to be 2-3 big players in civil aviation, otherwise it's going to be a problem. Then, of course, there is the military part, defense part, but that's another story.
Let's go back to the politics of the business to some extent. You mentioned NATO there, and thinking about the composition of your company, the Italian government is a shareholder. Italy, on the other hand, still doesn't comply with the NATO defense spending target. I'm wondering whether that is making your job harder.
It makes the job harder in that we cannot rely so much only on the domestic funding. In fact, we're exporting a lot, because to have the Leonardo's numbers, you have to be good in export. Otherwise, you don't make it only with the domestic market. You know, our second domestic market is US. We produce helicopters there. We own 72% of the RS. So for us, US is a very important market. The other one, as well important, is UK, where we have a lot of activities. I think it's approximately 9,000 people in US and then another 9,000 in UK. Maybe those are not the exact numbers, but you know, we are in that range. Mm. And there's Poland. So we do our effort to be a truly multinational company. The fact that one of the shareholders is the Minister of Finance, I mean, it's not so surprising. In the end of the day, a defense company has to guarantee also the national sovereignty in some sense. Now, in US, the model is that you have defense agencies, and most of the funding is coming from public money. In our case, we don't get public money. but we get some 30%, let's say, control to make sure that we don't sell products in countries that would not be allowed. So different models, but I believe that you need in defense, even in the free market, you need some control of the state to make sure that defense is done seriously and according to the international equilibrium. Otherwise, I could sell everywhere to whoever I want, and maybe this would not be fair for the geopolitics, including NATO geopolitics.
Right, that is clear. But what would be your message to Italy as a key member of the EU, as a key member of NATO, and obviously being a defense company?
The message to Italy is that, as far as I know, the government now is making an effort to rise the investment. So I think in these days, weeks, they're discussing how to make it. There will be an extra boost by the European funds, at least 150 billion. I know those are almost safe in the sense that confirmed. We don't know the rules, but we will see how this will be applied. So there will be extra resources to improve our deterrence capability, to refill our arsenals, because we gave weapons and ammunition to Ukraine. And I think we need to be much more solid in terms of defense capability. The rest is only industry. And our duty, our responsibility is to develop new product, to make innovation, not to stop to old products. I mean, we really need to cut off core business programs. Mostly we did this so far, and we have to develop new things that are very competitive. I mean, the only way is to develop high quality products. That's fundamental in the market.
I just have two final questions, sir. One is addressing the fact that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, has mentioned that Europe cannot do the job the United States can do in Ukraine. What would be your answer to that?
It sounds a very high-level question. I think Europe has, as far as I remember, 1.4 million soldiers and a great capability in terms of technology. The real problem in Europe is that the fragmentation doesn't provide a uniform landscape in a uniform scenario in defense. But in principle, 1.4 million soldiers and the technology we can develop is remarkable. Now, if I compare the procurement done by the United States in defense and the one in Europe, maybe there's a factor 2 in more or less difference. But we allocate that money on 27, 28 platforms, tanks, aircraft. Every country wants to have its own platform. United States are allocating maybe twice our money for procurement on a dozen of platforms. As a result, in US, you invest 20 billions per platform every year. In Europe, 2 billions per platform every year, on average, okay? So that is the problem. If we fix the fragmentation and we go towards a more concentrated, more focused effort as a continental defense, for sure we have all the capability to defend our borders. Of course, I think with NATO would be better, but even without NATO, the capability exists. But we have to fix the fragmentation. That's a key point.
The market valuation of your US peers is much, much, much higher.
Sure.
Do you think you will ever reach those levels?
I don't know. I think the market cap of those companies reflects a different bank system, a different investment system, a different work regulatory frame. Europe is more rigid in some sense. Cost of work, you hardly fire somebody, even if not very performant. So there are things that cannot be directly compared. As a matter of fact, at the moment it seems that the business is much better. The defense business is much better in US than in Europe. But I think those are things that can change, can improve. It's hard to answer. I mean, what can I say? At the moment, I'm in the States, I'm in UK, I'm in Europe, I'm in Poland. We sell everywhere. I know which are the difficulties, but believe me, if the products are competitive in terms of technology, the story changes.
And let me just clarify one thing. Has Donald Trump actually been a positive, therefore, for the European continent? Has his arrival at the White House been a positive for the continent?
I would like to say that the continent should not undergo any positive or negative influence by the president of another continent. I find this historically and socially strange to explain. However, because this is a situation, the first couple of months or so have been disruptive, but I'm a physicist and by background, and I like to see phenomena on the time scale. Never evaluate a complex situation by the first instant. It's like evaluating a situation after the bomb explodes. You have to see what happens later. Mm-hmm. So give me a bit more time to see. Maybe in 6 months, some of the statements, some of the claims, some of the ideas will be renormalized, or maybe getting even harder, I don't know. But I think we should give US and also Europe to see what happens in time. At the moment, it is rather disruptive. In any disruption, you can find good things like wake-up call, guys, move and make your defense. But it can be also not very positive. I mean, for instance, the extra taxes on car export. This I don't think we have a big advantage in fighting economically each other. Come on, we are the Western society. Is it possible that we are fighting among each other for extra pricing a car? I think the competitors are outside, right? Let's take a bit of time. We should evaluate cold-minded. I think the Japanese say, never make order on the shelf during the earthquake. So let's finish the earthquake and see what happens next. And I'm sure we will be all mature enough to fix things properly. If not, it will be a big problem for our children.